Hi, everyone. I'm Johnny Alexander. We're so excited to bring you another episode of Writer's Chat. As you may know, we meet every Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and you are invited to join us live if you're watching the replay. And if you are watching the replay, we thank you for that too. And we appreciate all those of you who are here. We're going to get right started in today's program. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa. I also want to introduce Brandy, though, who's another one of my co-hosts. Melissa is going to introduce our special speaker today. Go ahead, Melissa.
All right. Well, I am very privileged to introduce Wendy Hinote Lanier to you guys today. We're so glad to have her coming back as a return guest. Wendy, if you don't know, is a former elementary teacher, author, and class certified speaker who writes and speaks on a variety of topics for children and adults. Her writing includes titles from Ironstream Media, Focus Readers, State Standards Publishing, ABDO Publishing, Lerner Books, KidHaven Press, Lucent Books, and Capstone Press, as well as articles in online and print publications such as Highlights for Children and Clubhouse Magazine. Her current book, Puppy Dog Devotions, 75 Fun Fido Facts, Bible Truths, and More, is co-authored with Michelle Medlock Adams. Her first book, her picture book, Too Many Pigs in the Pool, from Sleeping Bear Press, debuts in spring of 2022. So we're really excited to have you with us today, Wendy, and Wendy's going to be talking to us about the perks and pitfalls of work for hire.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm so glad to be here and good to see all of you. We are going to talk about the perks and the pitfalls of work for hire and why would you want to do it? And, it's not the first thing a lot of people think of. So as we get into our discussion today, I first want to start with, what is work for hire? Then we're going to talk about the perks. Then we're going to talk about the pitfalls, because there are some, as with any type of writing. And then I'm going to give you some tips on how you can find work for hire. And hopefully this will be helpful to you. I've done quite a bit of work for hire. If you see those books up on that top shelf, most of those represent work for hire projects. And with that said, let's talk about what is work for hire. And we'll have time for questions or, whatever. So, but work for hire basically is work that is assigned. From a teacher's perspective, I gave you an assignment, you finish it, you turn it back in. That's exactly what work for hire is. It's usually assigned by either a publisher or a packager. And it's usually not your idea or your concept. It usually, not always, but it usually does not originate with the author. Another name for work for hire is just freelance. Okay. The guidelines and the content are established by the publisher or the packager. Now, I'm going to take just a second, because I've done whole presentations on packagers, but let's just talk about what a packager is for just a second. A packager is a book producer. They handle editing, designing, they hire the writers, they get the approvals, they do the final artwork, they find the artwork, they put it all together, and what they do is they hand it back to the publisher as a completed project ready to be printed. The publisher then takes it and they have it printed, and then they have the distribution network to put it out. But the packager handles everything up to that, and they're hired to do that. They're paid a fee. But almost all work that's done for packagers is freelance. It's work for hire. That's why they're a good place to look for work for hire. Magazine articles, ghostwriting, library books, coffee table books, reference books, many children's books, and what in a genre we call library books, which I kind of already mentioned. Gift books, the ones that you find at the airport or in the drugstore or whatever. Those are examples. A lot of times are of work for hire. You find this kind of work by sending a pitch letter to a magazine, a publisher, a packager. Now, another real quick aside here, pitch, query, cover. Those are 3 different kinds of letters. The pitch letter is just in a nutshell, again, whole presentation on that, but in a nutshell, a pitch letter is pitching yourself. It's selling yourself. A query letter is selling an idea, a project that you would like to see in print. And a cover letter actually goes with a project that you're turning in for consideration. That's it in a nutshell. So you pitch yourself, you query an idea or a project, and you cover a submission. Make sense? When you are thinking about work for hire, start by capitalizing on your own interests and your own areas of expertise. I have a friend who likes to travel, so she writes for travel magazines. Okay. And as you all know, many of you know, Michelle is a former cheerleader. She cheered in high school and college, her kids did, and she's coached. And so she often does work for hire pieces for a cheerleading magazine. You start with what you like and the areas of expertise that you have. It's also true, maybe you have an area that you're curious about, and maybe you'd like to learn more about it. Think of it like a research paper. You know, you're going to do the research, and then you are going to complete a project and turn it in. That's all there is to it. I've always said that I think one of the worst pieces of advice that we can give to writers is write what you know. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that, because you might not know a whole lot, but you can find out things and you can become an expert in an area. It's no different. You know, let's say somebody in your family develops some kind of new disease or health issue, and all of a sudden you start doing all this research and you find out what kind of vitamins and minerals they need and what kind of supplements and how to treat. By the time it's over with, you've become an expert on something you knew nothing about a couple of weeks or a month or so ago or whatever. So you can find out. This is the age of the information age. You can find out pretty much anything if you will do the research. So I encourage you, if you have something that interests you even, and you want to write about it, maybe you don't know anything about it now, I can tell you that there are some of these books that are up here. I've written about airplanes and rockets and racing cars and all kinds of things I didn't know anything about before I started the project. So it can be done. You know, if you're doing, some of you write fiction and maybe you write adult novels, and you know that requires, for your background information, you do a lot of research. Why not make that research work for you? Why not use the stuff that you found and maybe write an article, and you can sell that article, or you can suggest that topic to a magazine or to someone else. I always say, don't waste your efforts. Don't waste your work. Make it work for you in as many areas as possible. And that idea isn't limited to just magazine articles. It applies to books and web content as well. So keep that in mind. Now, in terms of a magazine, let's stop and talk about just the magazine for a minute. If you want to know whether a magazine does freelance work, here's what you do. You open it up to the page where you find it's usually 2 or 3 pages in, and somewhere in there, you're going to see a list of editors. Yeah. Southern Living, you go in about 3 or 4 pages like this, and is it backwards for you? Sorry. Anyway, there's a list of editorial, design, photography, all that kind of stuff. Then you go to any article and you look to see if there's a byline. First of all, if there is no byline, then it's probably done in-house. Secondly, if the name in the byline, this one says Elizabeth Hutchison Hicklin, and if I go back to their editorial page and I scan through there, It's a lot to look at. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to look through and see if I can find her name in that list of editors or writers. And if she's on that list, then that tells me that they do in-house stuff, that they use in-house people, and that they don't do a lot of assignments. But there are a lot of magazines where you'll find those names differ. You'll have the name, an author's name, and that author's name does not appear anywhere in that column of people that work for the magazine. And so that's a hint, or to tell you that they do hire, do work for hire, that they will take articles from authors that are not part of their editorial staff. So that's how you can find out whether they do it in-house or whether they hire it in. Most companies, just I very rarely are they not going to, unless they just don't take any work for hire. Most of these companies that take it, that whether it's a magazine, a publisher, or a package, they're going to have guidelines in place for doing this. And all you have to do is check and see what those guidelines are. And I highly recommend that you do before you send a pitch or a query. And the reason for that is if you haven't done your research, it's going to show up in your letter. And they're going to go, nope. And then you've shot your chance at working for them. But think about this, even if they can't take your work right now, or they don't like your idea or whatever, if you've done a really good letter and you've let them know that you've done your research, that you know about their company, you know what kinds of things they do, you explain to them why you think you're the person to write for them, they're going to remember that letter. And while they may not hire you right then, they could hire you down the road. I have a story about, I think it was Lerner. I had to do some type of audition or something. And it was like, it had been so long that my email address had changed. We kind of went from dial up to high speed at that point. This is back in the early 2000s. And I didn't have the same email address, and I can't remember, but we're driving down the road one day and my cell phone rings, and this lady says, I'm an editor with Lerner. And I said, wait, what did you say? And she said, I'm an editor with Lerner. We were wondering if you would do a book for us. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. Very nonchalant, They had my audition. They had the information. It was on file. I know it had been 3 or 4 years. So they do keep that stuff and they do go back through it. So you just never know. Now, freelance projects are often very formula driven. They will often, and this applies possibly more to children's than adult, but they will actually tell you how many words. They might even tell you, how many chapters, how many words per chapter. The guidelines can be very specific. So you need to be aware of that. It depends on who you're doing your project for. Some of them are even written to a specific grade level, and that's a whole nother topic also, because there are all kinds of things that you can do to check your grade level, hit your grade level, all those things. So that's another talk. So let's talk for a minute about the perks. What are the perks of writing for hire? Why in the world would you want to do this? Well, companies that do work, I think maybe one of the biggest ones would be that companies that do work for hire are often willing to take a chance on an unpublished author. If you can demonstrate to them, first of all, that letter that you wrote to them is well written. And secondly, that you have some life experience or some education or whatever that appeals to them, then they will take a chance a lot of times on an unpublished author. So it can be a great place to start building a writing resume. It's a good place to start. Another perk is that the timeline to publication is much shorter usually. In most of the library books that I've done, I do, I'm assigned a contract, I finish the contract, and within 6 to 12 months, I have the book in my hand. That's not uncommon at all. Whereas, Melissa told you I have a picture book coming out in spring 2020, 2022, and I'm excited about that. But I signed the contract for that book almost 3 years ago. It's going to be 3.5 years before that book actually makes it to the shelf. It's crazy, so traditional publishing, traditional, I'm going to send this in and they're going to buy it and all that can take forever. And this is a fairly large house, and I think they may take longer than a different, Michelle and I wrote Puppy Dog Devotions. That book took over a year. So to go to publication from the time we turned it in. So, whereas 6 to 12 months is a whole lot shorter than that. So that's one of the perks, I think, is that you've got that book in your hands within a relatively short period of time. It does pay. Work for hire does pay, and it usually pays within a few weeks of you turning in that final product. I still haven't seen the second half of the advance for the picture book. See, 3 years, right? And then you'll have, if it's a traditionally published book and you have royalties, those checks come once or sometimes twice a year, depending on the company. So that money is way down the road. And I know that many of you don't write for the money, but by the same token, you have the laborer is worthy of his hire. You have a right to be compensated for the work that you do. So that's something to think about. Another perk is that having some of these on your resume is going to help you, is very likely going to help you get your foot in the door somewhere else. You can, when I started, I taught school, and somewhere around 2001 and really around 2000, I had gone to an all school, the whole school, like the whole history of my high school reunion thing. They called it a 20th century reunion, I think. And I'm sitting up in the bleachers with my childhood friend that I grew up 2 doors down from, and she says, "What happened to the writing?" And I thought, yeah, what happened to the writing? Well, I started teaching school and things got in the way, and kids and stuff. But she prodded me to get back to something that I had always done as a kid, and in high school and everything I had written, but so I started pursuing that again, but I was starting from scratch. And around 2002, I went to my first writers conference at Glorieta Christian Writers Conference, and I was starting from zero. So having some work for hire projects, that helps you build your resume, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying you can't get hired. That's why I said work for hire is a good place to start, because you want to start building that resume so that a publisher can see that you are a tried and true writer. The other thing is that it shows that you are able to complete that whole editorial process. I know a lot of people, and I know it would be none of you because you've been here long enough, but there are people who believe that you write something and you turn it in and the editor's going to fawn over it and it's going to go straight, you will never touch it again until you get your book. And there's not anybody here that believes that, is there? Because that is not going to happen. There are edits and rewrites, and you finally get the galleys and you look at those, and it just goes back and forth. It's a lengthy process. And I have known people that were so attached to every single word that they wrote that they would unwilling to change anything. Well, the minute you do that to an editor, you've probably, even if they've already hired you, you'll finish the project, but you're probably never going to get another job from them. And if you do that very often, you're not going to get any more jobs. So the fact that you have worked with a company, even if it's a work for hire, it shows that you can go through that whole editorial process, and that's important for them. Another perk is that it allows you to capitalize on the areas of your expertise. I have a background as an elementary teacher. I have a background as an elementary science teacher. I have a background, I'm stepmom to a deaf child who is now 40. Wow. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, I have a background in speech and hearing. I'm just saying I have areas of expertise that are unique to my life experiences and my education, and all of you do too. There's a lady that was in my Houston SCBWI group who worked for NASA. Like, she put people on the moon, right? That's part of her life experience. And so she does write about that a lot, but she's a good person to do that. That's part of her area of expertise. So maybe it's finance or health or fitness or cheerleading or, gardening, whatever. So, and another perk, I think, and we alluded to it earlier, is that this allows you to utilize that research that you've done for another topic, another book or whatever. Doing work for hire can sometimes, not always, but can sometimes let you take that information that you spent all that time gathering, put together an article, put together something, and then sell it somewhere else so it does double duty, and that's a good use of your time. Now, for all that, there are some pitfalls to work for hire, and it pays, but it's a flat fee. So there are rarely any royalties. I have one book out of all the work for hire that I've done that has some royalties. Unfortunately, it is the one book that never even earned out the money they paid me up front. And I'm not going to take credit for it, because most of what's in that book, the editor took maybe it's because if you're doing a book on the Missouri Compromise and you're trying to write it to the 4th grade level, and Missouri and compromise is a 5th grade word, you got a problem right off the bat. And the editorial people, I did what I could, and the editorial people took it, but I wasn't very happy with the final product. So I kind of get why it hasn't sold, but I still got paid. In fact, I got paid better for that book than any book I've done like that. And they can't take that money back. So you will get a flat fee. There are almost always no royalties. And even if it gets reprinted and becomes a bestseller and translated into other languages, which I've had happen, you don't get a dime. And I cannot find out. Here's another little thing. They will not tell me what the sales are on. Like, how if you're doing a proposal in traditional publishing and they want to know what your sales are on your last book, well, that's all well and good, except that I can't get those numbers, because once I send it off to them, I don't own it anymore. So they literally won't tell me what the numbers are. So while I know, for example, that when I go to Amazon and I see, oh, that's a reprint, they've repackaged this and they're doing this again, or I see I'll do a search or something and it's printed in all these different languages or whatever. That's all well and good, but nobody's saying anything to me about it because I don't own that project anymore. So that's kind of one of the pitfalls. Another one is that you may or may not actually get your name on it. Now, I've been fortunate in that I can't think of a single project that I don't have my name on it. On the cover, it says my name, but that does not always happen. Sometimes it's just, especially if it's a compilation kind of thing. I did one of those amazing fact books, and this was the Amazing Bible Fact Book, and I didn't do all of it. I just did spreads of it, and there are multiple authors. So of course, I'm trying to remember if my name is even on the inside cover. It might be, but certainly not on the outside. Sometimes with a work for hire project, you don't get any credit, but you do get to put it on your resume, and they do put your name on the check, and that's good. As long as you get the check with your name, they spelled your name right, you're good. Okay. And to me, I think one of the biggest things about work for hire is that you cannot afford to get too emotionally invested in it. This is not the place to do something that comes from your heart, which is why I don't recommend proposing your own ideas. Because if you propose your own idea, and some companies will do that. They'll let you do a query and they'll let you propose a series or something. But then once they sort of buy that idea from you, it's their project. And they're going to tell you how to do it. And even though it may have originated with you, you will have zero control over the final outcome. It's like the book for Lerner I was telling you about. That was a problem working through trying to get the grade level to the correct grade that they wanted with a subject that really didn't fit that grade level. And I worked on it. I turned in what I thought was a good product. When I got it back, I almost didn't recognize it. I have no say in that. You would have no, so that's to me, that's one of the biggest downfalls or pitfalls to work for hire, is that most of the time, and I think this is especially true of children's, the end product, I mean, once you turn in your part and they say you're done, then it may or may not look anything like what you thought it was going to. And you will have zero control. Did I mention that? There will be you will have no control. So I really don't recommend that you propose one of your own ideas that's important to you. Now, if you don't care, like if it's just this, if you think, oh, this would be cute, we could do this, and the publisher says, oh, I like that idea, let's do da da da, and y'all do it, and it's not something you're very emotionally invested in, well, that's fine. Just be prepared to release it. You're going to have to take your hands off of it at some point. There's usually, when they hand you those guidelines, there is no deviation. Even if you come up with something better, they're not going to change their formula. Partly because they may have multiple contracts out with multiple authors doing a series, and they all need to look the same. That may be part of it. But even if you're, and I've done whole series, I've had a packager, especially that I've done quite a bit of work for, come back and say, well, you know, do you want, the publisher was happy with this book or these 2 or 3 that you did, do you want this whole series? Yeah, you know, that's fine. But I still am done. Even though they liked what I did, I still don't have the freedom to make changes or say, hey, you know, we need to do this way or whatever. So there's probably not going to be any give and take on that formula. You're going to follow that formula to the letter. And if you're not good at following directions, you might be in trouble. So just saying. Though, as I said earlier, those guidelines may dictate word count, and it will be like within 100 to 200 words. It will be a very tight thing. And it can't be less. Like, you know, you can't say, oh, well, this says it all. And it has to be within this framework that they set. Grade level, especially for children's, word count, maybe even the headings, they may give you titles. Chapters. We want you to do a chapter on this, a chapter on this, a chapter on this, and they may tell you exactly how they want it laid out. But that can be good and bad. I never have had any trouble. Maybe it's because I'm so absent-minded. I really don't mind having that guideline to go back and say, oh yeah, that's what I need to do. This, you know, it's all written down there for me, so I can't, and I literally will print out the guidelines and check things off as I get them done. Could be a pitfall. You might find it a perk. You never know. Okay, so now we get to the fourth part of this, which is how are you going to get this work? What are some tips for finding work for hire? And you start by researching the guidelines for whomever you want to write for. Go to the company website, look for the word guidelines. So a lot of companies will at this point actually say author guidelines. There'll be for authors, there'll be a button somewhere. It might be on the contact us page. And there will be a separate button that says authors or something like that, but look for it. Don't ever start sending queries or anything until you've found their guidelines. If you can't, and I have had this happen where you have looked at their website, you've looked in the Writer's Market Guide, you've looked everywhere you can think of, and you haven't found any guidelines. You can use the contact us button and say, hey, I'm an author looking for guidelines. I would use that as a last resort, by the way. But, you know, if you really can't find them, then email them using that contact us button and say, I was wondering if you have any guidelines. And hopefully at that point, if they're not available, they will make them available to you. You can find a publisher that you're interested in by visiting your library. Look at the kinds of books you're interested in writing. This might apply more to children's writing than it does adults, just because as a children's author, I'll go to the library or to the bookstore and I'll start looking at the kinds of books that I'm interested in writing, and then I'll look to see who's the publisher. And I've been doing it long enough now that I start to recognize packagers' names, and I know the publishers. So if I see Rourke, for example, I'll go, oh, okay, they're an educational publisher and they do assignments. As you get to know your publishers more, as you start scanning those publisher names on those books, you'll say, oh, okay, they do assignments. I've seen that in the market guide or something like that. You'll become more familiar with who makes assignments and who doesn't. But start with your library or your bookstore and just, okay, I like this. I can do this. I would like to write something like this. And when you find that, you start from there and then find out what their guidelines are. You're going to check the Writer's Market Guide. I have a copy of the 2021 book markets for children's writers, which is one that I prefer over just the Writer's Digest Market Guide, which I'm not even sure they do anymore. Did it change? I think, I'm not sure. Anyway, this one is put out by the Children's Institute, Children's Literature Institute, I think it is. You go to writingforchildren.com if you're interested. No, writersbookstore.com. This has changed recently too, but I like the way this one's laid out. But here it says children's trade publishers. If I go a little further, I'll find classroom and educational publishing. But as I go through each entry, a lot of times if they do, for example, Creative Teaching Press, the guidelines and the catalogs are available. They prefer ideas from teachers. Send the proposal or a complete manuscript. It does not say that they make assignments. However, if you keep looking, you'll find somewhere along the line, they will actually makes assignments or work for hire. There will be a notation in there somewhere. So this is a good place. Your market guide, whichever market guide you're using, is a good place to check to see if the company you're interested in does this kind of thing, to see if they offer work for hire. When you send your pitch letter, let the publisher or the packager know your qualifications. It's like writing, there are certain things that are common to a pitch, a query, and a cover letter. And one of them is your qualifications. Why are you qualified to write this? And you need to get that down to 2-3 sentences, no more than that, because you don't ever want your letter, whether it's a pitch, a query, or a cover, to be more than 1 page. You always want to keep it to 1 page, and you want to make sure you've got the right things in there. So for a pitch letter, you're going to let them know your qualifications, especially if you've never published. If you have published, you're going to want to make mention of some of the things that you have published. And then you're going to ask them, you're just going to ask, you're also going to do this. You're going to let them know in that first paragraph that you're familiar with what they do, the kinds of things that they do. You're going to let them know that you've done your research and then you know a little bit about their company. And then you're going to list your qualifications. And then you're going to say, I would love to write for you. Do you have an assignment that I could take on? Something like that. If you don't get an answer right away, that's fine. As I said earlier, they will keep that information, especially if they were impressed with your letter. So spend some time on that letter. Make it the best writing you do. Don't dash it off and send it in. Spend some time crafting that query letter. Now, the good part of that is that you can save a copy of that in. I hate reinventing the wheel every time I start to do something. So I have a folder on my computer that I keep basically keywords and phrases in, the bios and the, I so that I can cut and paste and then manipulate a little bit. The part you won't be able to do that with is what's specific to their company, but your qualifications and the things you've written, those aren't changing. And the fact that you'd like to write for them, that you would love to take on a project for them, that's not changing either. So you write that letter, they're going to, even if they don't respond right away. Now, it's also okay to come back in a few months, once a quarter or once every 6 months, and say, hey, I sent a letter in January of this year. Just want you to know that I'm still interested in writing for your company. And if anything's changed about your qualifications, you might put that in there. But it's okay to give them a little nudge down the road, because sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, you remember that author? We really liked that letter, but we never did anything with that. They just said they were still interested. And that little nudge might be what gets you in the door. You never know. Be sure that nudge is a polite nudge. Please don't say, don't make it sound like, hey, I told you guys I wanted to write for you and I never heard back. And no, just keep it light and polite. There you go. Now, if you pitch an idea or an actual article, let's say you're pitching an idea or you're pitching an article, a completed article to them, but you're still interested in working for that publication, whatever it is. Maybe, or you pitched a book, whatever. Say, you know what, if this doesn't work for you, I would be happy to take on a work for hire assignment for you. If you like that company, you like the kinds of things they're doing, and you think that you're a good fit for them, it's perfectly okay to let them know. If this doesn't work for you, I'd be happy. I'm open to an assignment from you. And if they like the writing, but maybe it just didn't fit what they're doing right now, they might come back and say, hey, could you tackle XYZ for us? You never know. Couple of places that you might want to check out for packagers. Remember, I told you that packagers will often try someone who does not have a long list of publications, or sometimes even none. So where do you find packagers? Well, you might go to the literary marketplace. They do have a website. They do have a list of packagers. Now, fair warning, you do have to register. This has changed a little. When I first started doing this, you could look pretty extensively without having to pay anything. They clamped down a little bit. You will have to register to search their members list, and you will only get limited access for free. However, you will at least be able to see the names of the packagers, which you can then check against your market guide, see. So, or you can just check online, like look up the company. Not all packagers are in a market guide, but you can, if you see a name in that list of packagers there, you can then go to their website online and check them out as a company. You, as I said, you only get limited access for free, but it's enough to give you the information you need to go forward with that. Now, they do have a subscription, but it's kind of expensive. It's several $100s a year, and I really don't see any point in it for you. Really, all you're looking for is the name of the company. You need to know who is the packager, and then you can go to their company website and find out more about them. So literary marketplace is one place. The second place I'm going to recommend is the American Book Producers Association. They have a website, American Book Producers Association. They have a list that you can search by the type of book you're interested in writing, whether it's adult Christian fiction, adult Christian romance, children's nonfiction, whatever. And they have on the main page, they have a button that says member directory, and that'll take you to a new page, and it allows you to search the names of their members by subject category. Now, what that means is their members are the publishers and stuff. So when you see that list of people, or I should say, when you see that list of publishers, it's kind of like with the literary marketplace. Now you've got a name and you can go to the company's website to check them out more thoroughly. So American Book Producers Association, check their member directory. And then what you're going to do there is do a search for the type of writing that you're interested in doing. And then that's when it'll give you a list. These are all the people that we have as members who do Christian romance. Here are all the members that we have that do children's nonfiction. Here are, that sort of thing. That gives you a list of people that you can then check out to see if they're a good fit for you. They may not be, but it's a starting point. And that's what I'm offering here is some ideas for how to start finding these. Frankly, once you get started doing work for hire, what happens is you tend to get with a company, they like your work or whatever, and you get repeat business from them. And if you're not, as a writer, it's not a bad thing to have different kinds of income. And you'll get to the point where, and I'm kind of at that point where my life and where I am right now, I'm really not interested in picking up a whole lot. Like, I'm not trying to make a living at this. I know people who make a living at this. They troll the things for assignments. They keep their calendar full, but that's how they make their living. So for me at this stage in my career, it's not a bad idea to have work for hire, because that's a check that comes sooner. But then in traditional publishing, there will be royalties. So it's kind of like building different income streams, and it's not a bad idea. The third thing I would suggest here, we've got the Library Marketplace, American Book Producers Association. Also check with your writing organizations. For example, SCBWI on their their website, they have a list of packagers available to its members. Maybe you're a member of some other type of writing group or whatever. Some organizations will list, writing groups will list packagers or publishers that they endorse on their website.
Wendy,
yes.
Could you tell us what, I'm not sure I'm going to get the initials right. Is it SCWI?
SCBWI.
Okay, can you tell us what that stands for, please?
That is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I am no longer closely associated with them. They have chapters around the country. When I lived near Houston, I was pretty actively involved with that group, it depends on where you live as to how active that group will be. But if you're a children's writer, you might want to check them out just to see what your local chapter is like, but they can be very helpful to you. And the national, actually international group, SCBWI, has a website. And if you are a member, you have access to all the things on their website. And membership is around, last time I checked, was around $80, $85 a year.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay. That's fine. If I'm missing it, I'm almost done. I'm on my last couple of points, and then we have time for questions. Is that good?
That's great.
Okay. All right. Last couple of things. Last one, go directly to the website of the company you're interested in writing for. Maybe you've been and you've seen some book that you thought, oh, I love this book. I like the way they do this. I can do this. If you see that, then go to their website, research them, look in the market guides, and send them a pitch letter. Can't hoit, right? And then send them a gentle reminder every 3 or 4 months, especially if you know they give assignments, and then you're going to want to prod them a little bit. But as I said, if you do a good job, if you follow those guidelines, if you are not a pain in the butt to work with, if you can take editorial direction, then what you're going to find is that they'll come back to you and they'll say, hey, we have these titles coming up for the spring or for the fall or whatever. Are you interested in doing any of these? Sometimes, I mean, I've had them say, do you want to do all of these? Do you want to just do, you know, and sometimes I've had to say, hey, I've got other things on my plate right now. I'll take a couple of them. Or sometimes I've said, hey, those of you who know Michelle, like, know that she, like, the more things she has on her plate, the happier she is. I am not that person. You start getting too many things on my plate, and I'm just going to shut down. I can't work under that. So I am pretty careful about, I have this that's due here. I'm not taking on anything else that's due anywhere in there and then I'll take something that might be due further. But I'm very careful about sorry, overloading myself, because I know that's not how I work. And you have to keep that in mind. But as I said, if you do a good job, they're probably going to come back to you and offer you other opportunities. And finally, I just want to say this. Remember, freelance work is available from packagers and publishers no matter what the market is doing. I don't care what the market's doing. They're still going to be doing. Now, I'm not saying that it's you're going to, start getting offers left and right. But I am saying that there is work to be done regardless of what book publishing is doing. All it takes is a willingness on your part to look for the opportunities. So at this, I will say, are there questions? I apologize. I see the chat going by, but I haven't been reading it because I can't talk and do that at the same time. So are there questions?
You're fine. We monitor the chat, and I don't know that there were too many questions. There were comments about, like, if the time has come, like if you send an inquiry and this website says, let us know, we'll let you know within 6 months, and you haven't heard anything, is it okay to
oh yeah, I definitely think it's okay to say, I queried or I contacted you in whatever. I just want you to know that I'm still interested in your company and would love to write for you. I think that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. This has been great. So let's go ahead and have everyone come back on. I will try to make sure that those that I might have put in what we call writer's chat jail.
I see a thing here about the SCBWI becoming highly political, and I totally agree with you. As a matter of fact, that's why I'm no longer affiliated with that organization. However, I will, with this caveat, your local organization may not be, and they may be very helpful to you. So I'm not willing to say they can't be of any help. However, I have chosen to no longer be a part of the national organization. If I was going to be part of a political group, that would not be the one. I don't see any reason to make it political, but it has become that way. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So yeah, if people want to come back on, and then if you have a question that you want to ask Wendy while she's here.
Was all that clear as mud?
I thought it was great. I thought it was just extremely, extremely helpful. Your experiences and all of that, and even writing books and so on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I do work for hire too, in the fiction world for Annie's Publishing, and it really has been a great learning experience. And one of the perks for me is those are books I don't have to market necessarily, because
yes, that's true.
Because they're sold on a subscription basis. So there's a series, and I might write one book in the series. I might write, there's a series coming up. I'll be writing 4 books in the series. But I get paid a flat fee, and I turn it in, and I get a few copies in the mail, and then that's.
Yeah, maybe one of the pitfalls is you're going to get. I know when I first started doing this, I got like a half a dozen. These days I get 2.
Oh,
they send 2. That's it. There's one for me and one for my mom, and that's it. So.
Yeah, you don't get a lot, but it is kind of nice. Now, the pitfall to that is that there's not the discoverability aspect necessarily then, because those books aren't available unless they're used on Amazon and in those places. But still, it's it's not bad money, and I get to write stories, and I don't have to work another job. So, it's got that plus for me, and they really seem to like me. So that's a plus too.
Well, yeah, that, as I said, an author should probably have multiple income streams, especially if you're trying to make your living that way. And I have been fortunate in that my husband is our primary breadwinner, and that's a blessing for me, but not everyone has that situation. I know other people in the field that they're feeding their kids, right? This is the difference between having groceries or not. And so this is one way. It's a little bit more of a certain, you're going to get how much you're going to get, and you're going to get it within a reasonable amount of time. So that's not a bad thing.
Well, and I think another plus too, especially for shorter pieces, is that it doesn't even take that long to write them. I mean, like a book may still take 3 or 4 months.
Right.
A magazine article you might be able to do in a couple days, maybe longer than that, but it's not a months long
right
project.
Exactly. And some of those magazine articles pay quite well.
Yeah.
I have not done a lot of it. I was pretty much determined that highlights it was kind of like on my bucket list sort of thing, and I was going to get one in there, but probably won't go to too much trouble to do it again, but I did get the one, right? And then, I've done I talked to Jesse Floria at a conference, and we discussed a particular topic, and he said, yeah, I like that idea. Can you do that for me? And so, yeah, but it can be, some of them can be. I will tell you this, for example, Highlights doesn't pay all that much for their articles, but I did an article on Longhorns, and at the time I had a local farmer rancher who owned Longhorns, and I said, next time you get a calf on the ground, call me. And he called me like on a Valentine's morning, and it was frosty, and but he had a new calf. They let me name the calf, and I got to take all kinds of pictures and everything. Well, Highlights paid me more for the pictures than they did for the article.
How about that? That's so cool. That's cool.
That can happen.
Yeah, that's neat. And just for those listening who may not know, Jesse Floria, who Wendy just talked about, is with Focus on the Family. So that would have been for a Clubhouse article.
Yes,
right?
Yes, he is Focus on the Family, and this was years ago. I think he's moved up the chain these days in the editorial chain, but this was, probably, I don't know. Don't ask me. I might lie. Don't make me lie.
But Jesse's a really nice guy. So if you ever at a conference and Jesse's there and you have any interest in writing for any of the Focus on the Family magazines, talk to him, and he is very generous with his time and with his
He
money.
is.
And
he's a great guy.
He will help you get your foot in that door. So yeah. All right. Does no one else want to come back on and ask any questions? We had people kind of pop in and then not really stay. So this is your opportunity. If you have any questions about work for hire or freelancing, any questions about those topics, come on in.
Someone mentions here that writing articles about your topics helps get an audience. I totally agree. If you do an article, at the end of that, there's your little bio line, right? And it's going to say, what you get to do then is say, so-and-so and so-and-so, author of, and then you get a plug for your book.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the circulation of whatever it is you're doing the work for hire for, that could be a great way to market your book. So that's a good idea. That's a good point.
Yeah, and any time I've gone to a writers conference where they're talking about, like, the magazine editors get up and on a panel or something, and they'll say, we know you all want to write a book. Everybody wants to write a book, but know that the magazines have much greater circulation than books do, and your message is going to get out to a lot more people with a magazine article than it will with your book. Exactly.
And if you do write books, that's going to increase your visibility. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, let me go ahead and say next week, for the next 2 weeks, in fact, we're going to be talking about newsletters and why you should send out newsletters, how to send out a newsletter. We're still kind of working on the logistics of the presentations, but that is what we're going to be doing in the next 2 weeks. So we've got people in the chat talking about they're not coming on camera because there's a puppy in the room. It's like, I want to see the puppy. And we've got grandkids. All right, well, I'll let you guys come on after the recording. So again, Wendy, thank you so much. We're glad you're here. And for
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. That was really great. And we'll see everybody next week on Writers Chat. Bye-bye.